I'm a military brat. My mom was in the army, so I spent a lot of my formative years in Western Europe. So I mean, I had friends who were British, French, Swedish, Dutch, Greek, Turkish, as well as American. So I had and I never had problems with anybody. My barber was some weird redheaded, ginger French dude, who just would cut my hair, 10 years old, so I never had any sort of compunction about race. So then I get here to America, and especially after I became an actor, my race became a really big deal, and I was sort of forced to think about it in a way that I hadn't before. Even though, I mean, as a Black person, you sort of who grows up in America, it's very, very difficult for reasons that I've explained before to avoid this sort of I would call it indoctrination or programming, in terms of like, this is how America is for you as a Black person, and you have to deal with all these oppressive forces, and the world is out to get you. It took me a long time to unlearn that kind of mindset. It was a lovely ex-girlfriend of mine who helped me see that. But
that's great. It does feel like it's coming from one direction too. Like the Democrats, you said, like there's this, almost comatose that they put over their voters. Like, you must believe this, or you can't be a Democrat. You have to have this virtuous feeling of, that you're the one who's oppressed. And it feels like the oppression that I've seen, now that I've really been paying attention, because, I lived my own life. I really focused on me most of my life. And, now I'm looking out, and I'm seeing racism and oppression from Democrats, especially to someone like you, who's like, look, I'm a free thinker. I'm not going to go along with whatever you think I should think. I'm going to do me because of my own lived experience that I've lived, and I know myself. You can't tell me how I feel. And they're like, well, this guy's a problem. He's not listening to our game of telephone, which all of these other people, like when you were talking about Gamergate, it just felt like you can apply that to almost every situation. The truth of what's going on. It's like, I've been watching actually what's happening with the bills and, with Trump last year, and then watching how the media spins it all, and then watching how the people who hate Trump blindly, just as an example, specifically Trump, will just, the talking heads points, and they're like, well, I'm going to repeat these talking head points. And I'm like, all right, well, here's this logical explanation on why you're wrong. And they're like, I don't care. You're evil.
I have a story to back that up, and this is why I sort of, I won't say that I can't get too mad, but, I think that people who used to be on their side of the aisle end up becoming some of the harshest critics, because they understand. I mean, I understand where the woke brigade, so to speak, is coming from. Although I kind of feel like woke is becoming an overused kind of buzzword, but they use it themselves to describe themselves. I know. So, forget it. But this was right after Barack Obama had won the Nobel Peace Prize, which he made good on by bombing the crap out of Libya, North Africa, and the Middle East. And presiding over a kill list, and Fast and Furious. We can go on about that. Scandal-free presidency, guys. Scandal-free presidency. But somebody had the audacity to point out to me on Facebook that Obama had not done anything to warrant winning a Nobel Prize. I mean, they literally just gave it to him.
True.
And
they gave it to him because he was a Black president.
Right. And it's what he symbolized, I guess. But at the time, someone pointed out to me that he hadn't done anything, and that's one of the reasons I love the NPC meme so much. Is it just seems so apt, so accurate. And I remember having that moment, where I read that comment, and the like buffering signal appeared in front of my head, and I just typed back, something snarky like, "Ha, you're just a hater," and like closed the computer and walked away, never replied to it. I didn't attempt to engage at all with the truth, the simple truth of what this person said. Yep. And part of the thing is, it's enough for these people to feel clever, to be snarky, to feel morally superior.
Yep.
But it's not important to them to be correct.
True. And it's their whole purpose in life. Their whole purpose is to be almost a foot soldier for Democrats, and just whatever comes into their brain, they're like, all right, that's our new That's our new talking points, guys. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, and you see it deployed, especially on social media. You know, it's like,
Oh yeah,
I can tell. I mean, I remember during the you know, the controversy over the like Georgia's voting bill, and people were talking about water this and water that. I'm like, it's clear you've been told to say that, and I'm so cynical at this point that, you know, I'm willing to bet money that most of the people criticizing this thing have not even read the damn bill.
Yeah,
So
they have no idea
what we're talking about. And you know, I don't fault people on the ground, you know, your regular person who like maybe signs up for some nonprofit organization or for some volunteer organization, or who says, or that when they chant Black Lives Matter, they think that the organization and the political movement actually cares about Black people. That is an easily made mistake, and it's forgivable. But I think once you get to people that are organizing these things, some of these leaders, some of these activists, these pundits, politicians, I don't have as much respect and regard for them when I think that their motives should absolutely be questioned. But part of the problem, it's like this sort of mastery of what's going on the left is, you know, this mastery of language for one thing, to even the slogan Black Lives Matter, just as an example, or masks work. They take things that are technically true, and then if you don't, and if you like that could be construed as true, or that people would agree with, or that it's plausible to agree with. And if you disagree with any of that or try to challenge any of that, then they can just go back and say, well, what, you don't think that Black Lives Matter? You don't think that masks work? And it's like, no.
You're not against you're not anti-fascist? It's like,
yeah, you know,
come on.
But they also live in a reality. And this is me, you know, I just got off the phone with a friend of mine that I went to grad school with, and I went to a very, very elite training conservatory for actors. And it's nice to connect with somebody that has the same kind of training background that I do, that has the same kind of appetites, hunger, and aesthetics that I do, and wants and demands the same kind of depth and richness from the work that I do. And we were just talking about how, you know, these people are in their quest for safety, and their quest for ideological conformity. They just, it's really making their worldview so shallow, and as a result, their work is shallow. And so they look for things, they try to create things that are timely, but they're not timeless. And I think, you know, I mean, I thought about I brought up the example to him of Elia Kazan's On the Waterfront. It's a classic film, but it's a film that he made at a time as a response to the McCarthyist era, where he was demonized for ratting out his friends as members of the Communist Party. So he made something that was very much of the time and of something that happened to him, but it remains timeless. You can go back, because it's a movie about Marlon Brando's character standing up for what is right and standing up for his own personal truth. I mean, you know, and he's literally being bullied and threatened and beaten at the end of the film, but he still stands his ground. And, you know, so we want stories of people like that. We want stories, these heroic stories. I mean, I was reading Aristotle's Poetics recently, just to kind of go back to the roots of all of this. And it was so refreshing to see this text from thousands of years ago, where Aristotle is like laying things out and saying, you know, these are the elements that compose a great story. And these kinds of elements need to be in place. He's trying to kind of codify what creates successful drama. He called it tragedy, he called it poetry, but, you know, and laying out all these stories. And it was always audience focused. What do you want the audience to feel? How do you want them to feel? How do you want to elicit laughter? How do you want to elicit tears? How do you want to create this tragic kind of situation that will move an audience and get your point across? And here's playwrights that do it well. Here's others that don't do it well. And I think today that there's so much of a focus on there's a great essay by a guy named Albert Maltz that was written back in 1946 called "What Shall We Ask of Writers?" I keep talking about this thing lately, and he's talking about he's a left-wing writer assailing left-wing art, you know, fiction and writing and drama, and he's saying, you know, and criticism, honestly, and he's saying that, you know, these people are using art as a weapon, and what that is doing is that it's creating artists who are shallow, who never mature, because they're always just trying to create art not to serve as a mirror to the human condition, which is what our job really is. all the prettiness and the ugliness of it. They are trying to create what Maltz calls political leaflets that will please their friends and peers and colleagues, and that's what they care about. They don't care about the audience, and that's one of the
or just make the money, really, also.
Right, but even then, you can have. I think Marvel just demonstrated that you can go for something that's popular entertainment, but at the end of the day, what those movies got right, and what the DC movies did not get quite right, is that we fell in love. We fell in love with the people behind the costumes, the people underneath the costumes.
Yeah,
it's really cool that Tony Stark is Iron Man. It's really cool that Steve Rogers is a super soldier. It's really cool that Spider-Man, is Spider-Man, that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. But at the end of the day, Steve Rogers is a guy who's out of his own time in a world that he doesn't really understand completely, and that he is becoming rapidly disillusioned with, as he's seeing some of the same kind of corruption and government overreach, so to speak. I mean, Captain America: Winter Soldier, that was about a big question at the center of that movie, was about freedom versus security, which is what we're looking at right now. Yeah. And, Tony Stark has this great emotional arc where he starts out as a complete self-absorbed, narcissistic a-hole, but he becomes someone who is selfless. He makes the ultimate sacrifice, which in the first Avengers film, Steve Rogers said he would never do. What a great heroic journey and character development. True. We care about Peter Parker because he's a kid from Queens, being played by a British actor, unfortunately. But but he's a kid just trying to find his way in the world and do the right thing, and dealing with all kinds of insecurities that come along with that. So that's what we fall in love with. We fall in love with the human beings who happen to have really cool powers. And I think that's what Marvel did. And the Russo brothers especially, they really just perfected the art of, like, we're going to draw these human characters with human motivations. We're going to punctuate it with some humor, but also, I mean, even Thanos, his connection with his daughter, they at least try to invest some humanity in these things. And I think,
and the fact that he wasn't doing it just to kill people. He truly thought that he was doing what was best for the universe. I mean, obviously killing half of the universe is, some can argue, is not the best for the universe, but
it's like, bro, you have these magic gems. Why don't you just make more stuff for everybody?
Good point. Here's another universe. Boom. You go live in that one.
Exactly. Like he could have done that, but then it wouldn't have been quite as compelling a villain.
Yeah, true.